What is up, everybody? It's Tuesday night. It's the Vish Kumaran show. We are here at a pretty sad time for me. I know the Lakers Nuggets game is going on right now. Larry and I were kind of 50-50 whether we wanted to compete with the game, and turns out it's not really much of a game at the moment. So we're not competing with much. Draft lottery happened today. Pistons got the 5th pick, Larry. We're in a very, very sad time for me. How's it going for you?
Well, yeah, no Victor Wembanyama to your Pistons. The Pistons
No
had
Victor.
Pistons
No
were the
Victor. No
worst team in the league.
No Brandon Miller. Come on, man.
The fix. They wanted Victor in San Antonio because they're a model organization.
Because of the Riverwalk? You think Wemby will look real good walking next to the Riverwalk?
Well, I just think that they know that Wembanyama is, he's the most hyped NBA prospect since LeBron. I mean, we're talking about 20 years. He is
100%.
He's 7'5". He's a generational talent. He's got unbelievable, talent. He can shoot step back threes. He's got an 8-foot wingspan, and
he can handle.
I think the league wanted to make sure that he dropped in a place where he's going to make an impact, and he'll make an impact in San Antonio.
So before we go, the reason this hurts me a lot, and before we
the Spurs did have the best chance
off season.
The Spurs did have the best chance.
Yes, they were with the Pistons and the Rockets. The reason this hurts me is because when the pandemic started, before anybody knew who Victor Wembanyama was, one of my buddies who's also a Pistons fan, sent me an Instagram video of a 16-year-old French kid cooking Rudy Gobert. And that 16-year-old French kid, look at me talking like I'm an old guy. No, that 16-year-old French guy, Victor Wembanyama, who's only like 2 years younger than me, who I'm referring to fondly as a kid, back there. He turned out to get a lot of hype. And so one of my buddies, he's like really into watching high school hoops and all of that. He saw this Instagram video and he started watching Victor Wembanyama at 16 in his French league because there were a couple full games on YouTube. And this guy was cooking back then. And he was like, dude, this is going to be the number 1 pick in the draft. So then, like, jokingly, we were like, okay, yeah, the Pistons are going to get him in 3 years. At the time, Emoni Bates was really hyped up as well, if you remember.
Yeah.
So we were like, Pistons, Emoni Bates is from Detroit. This is their LeBron Cleveland moment because he won, like, I think National High School Player of the Year or something as a freshman. And the only other freshman to do that was Kevin Durant, someone else. So his hype was out of the charts. And we were like, okay, we're going to get one of these guys with Cade Cunningham, who they got the subsequent year, and it's going to be like everything's going great for the Pistons, right, Larry? Well, nothing seemed to work out that way. This morning I was resigned to the fact that if they don't get Wembanyama, at least Scoot Henderson or Brandon Miller would be a consolation prize. Now with pick number 5, do I continue to care about the Pistons? I'm questioning that right now.
Well, I mean, all these guys, first of all, even as talented as Wembanyama is, he's still 7'4", 210 pounds. So it's not like he's, it's not like he's ready-made. I mean, he needs to put on some weight. And you never know.
Oh, you never know, but I'm still sad. So let's get to what people are here to hear us. No pun intended. Was that even a pun? Not sure. But what people are here to hear us talk about, which is the 49ers, of course. OTAs start next week. I titled this video, why I think Brandon Aiyuk is going to have a massive offseason, right? The video is titled Surrounded Him. And the reason I say that is because my question to you is going to be, which 49er do you think is going to break out this offseason? And for me, it's a player that's already broken out, but I have an explanation on why I think Brandon Aiyuk is going to break out. So I'm going to give you the floor, then I'm going to explain why I think that player is Brandon Aiyuk.
Do you want me to comment on Aiyuk, or you want me to go with my own?
Go with whoever you like.
Well, I could see a number of guys breaking out. I really could. I'll give you one that I'm very confident in, and that's Marcelino McCrary-Ball. The second-year linebacker who played safety, at Indiana. And, he could have gone in a lot of different places and played as a rookie Instead, he came to the Niners and sat the bench and was on the practice squad all year. And I asked him, I said, Marcelino, talk to me, man. Why'd you come here? You can't play here. And
So
he's like, because the guys here are dogs, straight dogs. And he goes, I want to be like them. I want to learn from them, and I'm willing to be patient. And, so he practice squatted it the whole year. Aziz Al-Shair jumps in free agency elsewhere, and that creates a spot for Marcelino, and Marcelino's not going to disappoint. He's a big-time player.
yeah, so my bad for interrupting you really quick. I
No,
agree
not
on
at all.
McCrary Ball, but I kind of phrased the prompt incorrectly to you because I think, yes, when I do say, well, who's going to have a large offseason, it's based on perspective, right? A guy like McCrary Ball going from he was on the practice squad and played preseason last year to becoming a starter on the 49ers, that's a massive jump. What I meant was more so we've seen different players on the Niners take star jumps over the course of off seasons, and we see it happening in that off season, right? Fred Warner before the COVID year, everybody saw it in camp. They saw the body transformation. They saw all of that. They were like, this guy is going to have the best season he's ever had, and he had an all-pro season. Debo in 2021, he was the superstar of training camp. Brandon Aiyuk was that player last year, not to the extent that Warner, Debo, and Kittle were, the preceding years, but he was that player last year. So I'm with you on McCrary Ball, and perhaps we can talk about guys like him a little bit later. Or maybe McCrary Ball is the guy you think is going to take a star jump. But I give you the floor again, Larry, with a different prompt, slightly different, which is which 49er do you think is going to take that jump where they're on a contract year and they're going to prove they're in the upper echelon of the league at their position?
Well, he may not be in a contract year, but I'll take Drake Jackson.
There we go.
Drake Jackson is, a player that just needs strength. And from, all I wanted to hear was that he was working out in the facility, regularly. And what I got from Steve Wilkes was that Drake Jackson has worked out like a madman, that he's been there every day, that he's put on a lot of weight in his upper body. And to me, that's all this kid is, all he needs. I think
Agreed.
I think he's a great player. I think there's greatness there. He's got the desired length to be a 4-3 defensive end. And he can do it out of a 2-point stance, out of a 3-point stance. He's really quick off the ball. He's got great agility. He's got great ankle flexibility. And we saw him as a speed rusher do some nice things. As the season wore on, I think his strength, there's lack thereof, started to hurt him. And now you're hearing that he put on some good weight in the upper body, and the opportunities there. Everybody on that line's a superstar, and for the most part, I mean, I think he's the guy that people are gonna, let go one-on-one. They'll probably still slide the line towards Bosa, and I think Drake's going to benefit greatly. If Drake is what I think he is, I think Drake is going to be a double-digit sack guy and a bust-out player.
I agree with you. I think his potential is off the charts. For me, the number one thing that needs to happen with Drake Jackson this offseason, he needs to change his body. And you mentioned it, right? He just needs to be in the facility. Grant always does a great job of describing this, right? When he meets rookies, meets players for the first times, the guys that look like they're men, they're NFL players with how their body looks, and then guys that look like, college guys that need to go through the body transformation, right? Like the Giannis year 1 to year 4 Giannis, the Anthony Davis of when he came out to what he looks like now, right? That body. Kittle from when he came out to what he looks like now. Drake Jackson is one of those people. I'm with you. I think that's the only thing really standing in his way because I trust the coaching that he's getting. Kasarik, obviously the best in the league at what he does. I trust who's around him, with Nick Bosa obviously being a top 1 or 2, 3 defensive player in the sport. Eric Armstead's a top player. Javon Hargrave is an outstanding player. So I trust that. And then Drake Jackson's talent is off the charts. You and I were debating this a little bit back and forth prior to the draft because you had your eye on a few other edge rushers. And I was telling you at the time that I didn't necessarily love the value of those other players because I like Drake Jackson's talent as a pure pass rusher a little bit greater with his explosiveness and his bendiness. I mean, you look at Will McDonald, who the Jets took at 15 this year. That to me is a better version, a more refined version coming out of what Drake Jackson was. This just just huge athlete with amazing bend. Will McDonald's bend was off the charts, similar with Drake Jackson. I love you throwing ankle flexibility in there. That's an old scouts term. Look at that. Larry Krueger coming out, in
Well,
full
they're
flow.
different though. These are different guys though. One, the guy that you're talking about is 240. The guy that we're talking about here with
Yeah, yeah,
Drake
yeah.
Jackson's
I meant
275.
simply from the bend. I meant simply from the bend.
Yeah.
Just the bend. Just the bend. And I was trying to illustrate that Drake Jackson, when you bend like that, that guy was a top 15 pick in the draft. So the physical talent of Drake Jackson is immense. That was the point I was trying to illustrate. Not that, Will McDonald equals Drake Jackson. I hope that came across.
Well, and while I'm saying Drake Jackson, it's kind of a little bit of a cheat because in reality, it's a reference to Javon Hargrave.
Right.
I mean, the 49ers had one of the least productive defensive tackle groups in the NFL last year as far as pressures. They only their defensive tackles combined for 59 pressures. That was fourth fewest in the league. Armstead missed 8 games. He had foot problems. He had ankle problems. He led the Niners defensive tackles with 14 pressures. But now here comes Javon Hargrave. And Hargrave alone accounted for 53 pressures and 9 sacks and a 14% pressure rate, which was best in the NFL among defensive tackles. So now you've got Hargrave with Armstead, with Bosa, and Jackson, looks to be the starter opposite Bosa. I was hoping they would go for Leonard Floyd or trade for Montez Sweat. I still kind of hope they would add a body here. But until that happens, man, Drake Jackson's in the right spot. He's the right guy at the right time in the right spot.
I agree with you. Now, let me tell you why I think that player is going to be Brandon Aiyuk. I think, look, if we're talking about already, establishing yourself in the NFL, Aiyuk has already done that. He's getting a second contract no matter what, right? Whether it's from the 49ers, we're not sure yet, but he's going to get a second contract and it's going to be a reasonable payday. He's a top 20, top, 15-ish receiver whose production doesn't necessarily reflect how talented he is. But I think we're about to see a step greater from him this offseason. So I thought last offseason he was outstanding, and he had a borderline 1,000-yard season in terms of production. He had the most consistent year of the 49ers skill weapons, but when all of them were healthy, it felt like there was a hierarchy that he felt last on, right? It felt like Christian McCaffrey. I think Christian McCaffrey currently is the best skill player on the 49ers. So I don't necessarily know with that, but then I felt like after him, Debo probably got second priority in terms of how much the ball was going his way, then Kittle, then Aiyuk. And so given that, I think, and given the fact that he is vying for a new deal that he will not get this offseason, I think if the Niners are going to pay him, they will make that decision based on the season he has this year. I've talked about the discussion of him getting paid being complicated in the past, because the guys that signed top of the market deals in San Francisco all entered their contract negotiation behind a first team All-Pro season. George Kittle did that in 2019. Fred Warner did that in 2020. Deebo Samuel did that in 2021. And Nick Bosa is about to do that right here in 2023. They're all, other than Eric Armstead, who was a free agent. He was legitimately a free agent. Every single one of these Niners star players did it on a back half of the first team All-Pro season. Aiyuk is definitely an excellent and ascending player, but the accolades and the resume certainly don't reflect him getting a top of the market deal right now. When you throw all of that in, I think he's going to be motivated. I think he's improved every season he's come into the NFL. That second year was a little bumpy, but I thought there was ultimate improvement from week 1 of the second year to week 18 of the second year. And because of that, I think he's about to have an explosive, massive, fantastic offseason. And I wonder if by the end of it, we look at Brandon Aiyuk and we say that's the best skill player on the 49ers. Christian McCaffrey, to me, has already had the best seasons of his career. And I think he's still an awesome player. I would probably say he's still the best running back in the NFL. But I don't know if Christian McCaffrey is ever going to have a better season than what he did in 2019. Similar to Deebo Samuel, same thing in 2021. Similar to George Kittle, same thing in 2019. When I look at all of those reasons, I think Aiyuk is the ascending player. He's the player that needs to get paid. We've seen the theme of Niners players that on the precipice of their contract, what they do that offseason, we see how serious they take it. We see their body, we see everything. I think Aiyuk took a step in that direction last offseason. It didn't yield in a contract, and so therefore I think he's going to take an even greater step this offseason. And a sleeper I'm just going to throw out to you that might be in this conversation, Larry, that we're not talking about. Two sleepers, actually. One is Talanoa Hufanga, but his validation is weird to me because he already got a first-team All-Pro, so he was kind of already viewed amongst, media, whatever, as a top player at his position, though I don't think any of us would give him that distinction as well as he played for a second-year player last year. There were a few mistakes in there as well. And then the other one is Aaron Banks. Aaron Banks, once he changed his body and he improved his confidence from week one, was a completely different player by the end of the season. There are some physical traits a part of Aaron Banks' game as a guard that are a little bit unique when you look at his movement at his size, Larry. Perhaps this is a season where he's so confident, he feels so good in his body. We now look at him as one of the best guards in the NFL, especially gearing towards that third year when he's on the precipice of being paid. What do you think?
Well, I mean, a lot there. One, I think Aiyuk is, very, very valuable. He led the team in targets. He was one of their only skill position guys who played all 17 games. Him and Ray were the only guys who played all 17 games. He had over 1,000 yards receiving. He had 78 receptions. He also had 47 receptions that went for first downs, far and away the most on the team. So, and he's a great run after the catch guy. I mean, it really is amazing when you look at the numbers. I mean, I don't think most people would even guess this, but Aiyuk had 4 times the number of receiving touchdowns that Debo had. 4 times. I mean, that's pretty incredible. Debo had 2 receiving touchdowns all year. Aiyuk had 8. Right. So, Aiyuk, I think in a lot of ways is their receiver that they lean on the most in some ways. They targeted him far and away the most times. He caught far and away the most balls for first downs. I think he's going to continue to ascend. I don't know if it will show itself statistically because they have so many different weapons, and it's you got to spread the ball around. But as far as the other guys on the team that could really ascend, I'll give you a couple guys in the secondary that I think are going to ascend. One is Samuel Womack. I think Samuel Womack is a terrific corner, and I think he's going to have a big role. So you think
he starts?
I think there's starts. I mean, he right now he's sitting behind Mooney Ward at right corner. I would think that there's a chance that Womack starts at the nickel or
that's what I was asking. Yeah, that's what I was asking.
I mean, I think Isaiah Oliver probably starts, but I don't think it really matters because you need 5 good corners. You really need more like 6 or 7, and they do have 6 or 7. So Womack is a terrific player. He's going to continue to get better. Also, last year, Womack showed I thought, of all the Niner corners,
the best ball skills
and the best break on the ball. And now this year, with more recognition, that break will be even better. I expect Womack to be an absolute monster. And I'm going to give you another one in the secondary, and it's this one. This one's going to blow your doors off.
Are you going to say Ambry Thomas?
No. I'm going to say Taylor Hawkins. Okay. Taylor Hawkins was a really, really good college football player. I mean, really good. He played for San Diego State. He played the corner. He showed up last year. They played him. They didn't play him at all. They put him on the practice squad. They put him at safety. He showed up at the rookie minicamp. His body has totally been reconfigured. He's lost a lot of weight. He's lean and fast. And this guy was a really productive college football player who now has all that knowledge, all that experience, and now he's in the best shape of his life.
Okay.
And this guy can play.
Okay.
And he can cover like a corner, but he's big enough to play safety. And I really think that, we'll see how it all shakes out. I don't know. I mean, there's no room at the end, right? You got Hufanga and Gibson are your starters. They just drafted Jair Brown. He ain't going
Right.
anywhere. George Odom's an all-pro or at least a Pro
Special
Bowl
teams
caliber
player.
special teamer. But they got a couple young safeties. One, and they're both former corners, Taylor Hawkins and Avery Young. Young played at Rutgers. Hawkins played at San Diego State. But Hawkins in this camp looked incredible. He's in great shape.
That's
And
great.
he's going to be heard from, and he may force them to keep 5 safeties, or if there's an injury, he's going to slide right in there. But Taylor Hawkins is going to be a player this summer.
That's a great pull from you. I will be keeping an eye out for one Taylor Hawkins. For sure. For sure. So obviously a lot of the Niners offseason talk, and the reason I wanted to ask you that is because it's going to be geared towards the quarterbacks, right? Where is Purdy? What's Purdy's timeline? How physically ready is Purdy? How is Lance looking? Is Lance going to start? How is Darnold looking? Who's the better player between Darnold and Lance? There's a lot of questions, right, that are going to be answered because the Niners are basically keeping like an open-minded competition with Purdy ahead, right? Purdy's ahead, but it's an open-minded competition in the sense that the winner of Darnold and Lance could easily be the starter for the entire season because Purdy could be ready, week 4. And if the Niners are 3-0, they likely won't reinsert him into the starting lineup over whomever is at that point playing, as long as that person is playing reasonably well in Darnold or Lance or whomever. So one thing I think that's not being discussed enough is the fact that we don't see many successful teams ever in the history of the sport have an offseason quarterback competition, ever. Let alone the fact that we don't see many teams successful after having an offseason quarterback competition. In fact, the only 2 that I can really remember off the top of my head, and maybe I need to research this because my memory is just not good enough to remember the right ones, is Seattle in 2012. They had a quarterback competition, between Russell Wilson and Matt Flynn, and Russell Wilson turned out to be terrific immediately, and they didn't go through what usually happens with the quarterback controversy. And then Seattle last year with Drew Lock and Geno Smith. Geno Smith was pretty terrific from day one for them, and he had an above-average quarterback season last year. So those are the only 2 examples I can really remember it, working. Otherwise, what I do remember happening, Larry, often with these quarterback competitions is one guy wins it, he ends up starting, he ends up playing well, but not good enough to convince anybody's the starter. So then you insert the other guy. The other guy is just not that much better, and you learn that both guys are not the guy. And I don't know if that's going to be the case with the 49ers because I genuinely, and I've stated this before with you as well many times, that I genuinely think this is a team capable of making the NFC Championship game next year with Brock Purdy, with Trey Lance, with Sam Darnold. I do believe that all 3 have the capability within the right situation and the right steps happening of doing that. So I'm not necessarily bearish on the Niners outlook, but I am bearish on this idea of a quarterback competition and what it does to a roster because I think it divides a fan base. It divides the roster. You're never really bought into one guy. And it worries me when I'm looking at the outlook for the 49ers this offseason being so open-minded on who the quarterback can be, because usually when you're not committed to anybody, it's very rare that somebody is like Geno Smith where they show themselves to be a guy that you can't commit to. What do you think?
Well, it's interesting. Teams sprint away from quarterback competitions. The Bears could have had one with Justin Fields and Bryce Young. And instead, they're like, "Oh hell no! We'll trade the pick, and we're not going to bring in Bryce Young, and we're going to go with Justin Fields." And so, I mean, teams, we see teams do that. I mean, if there is going to be a competition, they're like running away from it.
Right. I mean, if you look, Josh Rosen could have been a competition, but they shipped off Josh Rosen.
Right. And if you look at, what competitions do we even have right now in the NFL? I mean, I guess Baker and Kyle Trask in Tampa. I guess Desmond Ridder and Mariota last year in Atlanta, but now Mariota's moved on to Philadelphia, so Ridder is kind of the guy.
Do you consider? I feel like when you're looking at a 3rd-round pick, usually there's not even day 1 starter expectations on him, really. So he's kind of competing, but it was like C.J. Beathard competing with Brian Hoyer.
Yeah, I mean, but the rest of the league, I mean, what else is there? I mean, what do you got? Commanders may, go with the North Carolina
Yeah, I
kid
guess there. Yeah, Sam Howell versus
versus
whoever's the
Brissett,
back.
Jacoby
Yeah,
Brissett, whatever that.
maybe Anthony Richardson versus Gardner Minshew. Maybe
I
Bryce
love
Young
Anthony
versus Andy
Richardson.
Dalton.
I love Anthony Richardson. I think
But
Richardson's going to be one of the surprises of the league. But yeah, I mean, there
see,
are
I think both of those guys, like we can mention it as a competition. If it's close between Bryce Young and Andy Dalton, Bryce Young starting. If it's close between Anthony Richardson and Gardner Minshew, Anthony Richardson starting. Those other two guys are just in case they're not fully ready, we can protect them for a little while rather than true competitors for the
maybe
number one quarterback job.
maybe Brady, maybe Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi in New
Yeah,
England.
okay, there's
Maybe,
one. There's
maybe.
one that's
I
a
mean, a couple
possibility,
years ago,
yeah.
you had Tua and Fitzmagic and
Right.
Fitzpatrick in Miami, but that really was more just super young guy and a veteran guy. There aren't any. There really aren't any because most teams, when they draft their quarterback, are so convinced that he's the guy. But this year, I mean, when the 49ers situation is so unique, it's almost unprecedented. I mean, you have two guys who were taken in the third pick overall, and Darnold and Lance, who have yet to step into their moment, and for whatever reason, and there's reasons for both. And then you have Purdy, who was this incredible find as Mr. Irrelevant, who played exceptionally well when given the opportunity. But there's a really interesting article out today written by David Bonilla from 49er Web Zone, and it's all about
Okay.
Louis Riddick and how Riddick is not confident this year in the Niners. That Riddick went on the Rich Eisen show, and he said, "We don't know." This is a quote from Riddick. He says, "We don't quite know what Brock is going to look like coming off of injury heading into training camp." And then he went on to say, "We don't quite know what's even going on with Trey Lance." So, I mean, is there anything going on? Then he goes on to say, I'll tell you what, I had someone tell me this just recently. This is Riddick sharing this with Rich Eisen. He said they believe that Sam Darnold in that match with Kyle Shanahan out there in San Francisco, that could finally be the spot that totally makes him become the out of nowhere surprise of the year. I had someone who I trust implicitly when it comes to quarterback play tell me that. I'm telling you, I said to him, I was like, what? They're like, just trust me on this one. So Riddick went on to admit that Darnold beating out Lance is a strong possibility. And then he went on to say, and there's nobody who's a bigger Trey Lance fan than me. There may be, but
Yeah.
I'm a huge believer. I could be more disappointed for how things. I couldn't be more disappointed for how things have happened for him. So I'm inclined to go, look, he deserves the benefit of the doubt. He deserves another opportunity. He got hurt. We just don't know who he is. But just the fact that he's saying, and then he goes on to cite he doesn't know if he believes in the Niners because will McCaffrey or Mitchell stay healthy? Will Kittle or Trent Williams stay healthy? How good's Burford and McKivitz on the right side of the line? Is Debo going to be healthy? Who's the quarterback? Blah, blah, blah. And he likes Seattle. He thinks Seattle's going to burst onto the scene. So, good for Louis Riddick. I mean, he's not like everybody else. He's given us his honest opinion. He believes in Seattle. But I just think it's interesting when it comes down to Trey Lance. We don't quite know what's even going on with Trey Lance. What does that mean? What does that mean?
Well, and look, from the outside looking in, I do think that's a fair question. Because, look, as much as you can say, well, this is not real about Trey Lance, Ian Rappaport's making this up, and I have seen that, and I do think there's some validity to what was going on in that entire situation of him walking it back on McAfee 2 months after he made the original report when John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan also spoke to the media multiple times in that time and were asked questions about Ian Rappaport's reporting and didn't necessarily deny it directly. Weird ass situation.
Vish, they could have easily put the whole thing to bed and didn't.
A while ago. Instead, they made him say that on McAfee. It was a weird thing.
But they didn't even make him say it on McAfee. He just said it.
Yeah,
there was no pressure.
Why do you think he said it?
You think the Niners said to him, "You better go on there and retract this"?
Walk it back. I think he walked it back because they told him to walk it back. He looks like the worst person in this.
Maybe
Ian Rappaport looks like a terrible reporter right now.
But I mean, why would they? Okay, okay, so think about this for a second. John Lynch is on Twitter. John Lynch, that thing came out months ago.
Yeah.
If there was no validity to anything he said, I mean, what? Well, think about it. We're not talking about the long snapper. We're talking about the face of the franchise, the quarterback, the handpicked face of the franchise. If somebody had your handpicked face of the franchise potentially being traded, and you knew that that was erroneous and that there was no chance of that, why wouldn't you yourself just go, you know what?
That's my question.
No disrespect to Ian Rappaport, folks, but I'm the GM and Kyle's the head coach. Last I checked, we're the ones making this decision, and we're all in on Trey Lance. We love Trey Lance, and we have no idea what Ian's talking about. That's on him. He'll have to explain that himself. That's it. That's it. The whole thing goes away, and the impetus is all on him. Instead, they let it dangle.
The timing of when they kept him. It's the timing of when they kept him, and the fact that he remained on the roster, and therefore they needed to shift the narrative. The Niners seem to like controlling. Look, there's a lot of speculation we can.
It's just weird. That. They easily could have made it all go. They could have made it go away.
I agree. It's an odd situation, but from Riddick's perspective, I've been saying this the entire offseason. I've been saying I'm concerned about the quarterback situation. I'm concerned about the lack of distinction with the guy. And the thing that doesn't make sense to me, well, I guess it's kind of made sense to me now because I've pieced together logical theories of why it could be that. But the thing that remains confusing is why Lance went from being anointed as unequivocally the guy last offseason, gets hurt 2 games into it, and now we're into this quarterback competition type situation with Darnold, who you signed 20 minutes into the legal tampering period, right? That's the confusing part. Because if it was a Lance versus Purdy situation, right, we understand why Purdy gets ahead of Lance just because of what he did for 8 games. That was 8 games of equity. Lance has been unable to build up yet, right? He hasn't had that opportunity because he's been getting hurt. There's been a variety of situations, but Darnold kind of came into this competition, and now he's a part of this conversation with Lance. If you believe so much in Lance, and the only thing that happened to Lance is that he got hurt, if you're Louis Riddick from the outside looking in, you're like, this team believes so much in Trey Lance. Surely you're wondering, well, why isn't Trey Lance anointed as the unequivocal starter once again until Brock Purdy returns? I think it's a fair question, and I think that's why people are generally confused, because Darnold's contract also isn't just, hey, they signed Sam Darnold who could be cut, 6 months into the offseason and might not even make it in preseason if, Brock Purdy remains hurt. No, he's incentivized to remain on this roster. He carries the 13th largest active cap hit on the 49ers, 15th largest total cap hit, 13th largest active cap hit on the 49ers. So it's not like they're going to cut him. And then he carries playing incentives up to $11 million. That is like real backup playing money for him. And also he signed 20 minutes into the legal tampering period. So the Niners can say this, they can say that, but their actions have told us that there's something different in terms of how they feel about Trey Lance last season to this offseason. And what people are unable to put together is what that is, right? Because they keep telling us they love him. He's the best player ever. He's this, he's that. But then also, we had trade conversations about him. Oh, yeah, he's going to be splitting reps with Sam Darnold. So if you're Louis Riddick, if Vish Kumaran can sit here and read the tea leaves and tell you, well, this doesn't feel right, there's something odd here that's just not adding up. Of course, Louis Riddick, who's 30 times smarter than me, 80 times more well-connected than me, and has forgotten more football than I know, can surely read the same tea leaves and draw a similar conclusion.
Well, and it would be the surprise of the NFL season if Sam Darnold recreates himself and becomes the number 1 quarterback for the 49ers. It would absolutely be the surprise of the year. But then, for him to go, I had someone who I trust implicitly when it comes to quarterback play tell me, I'm telling you, I said to him, I was like, what? They're like, just trust me on this one. Why, that how many people have had that exact same kind of Sam Darnold report this offseason?
Too many, man. Too many. But it's because Sam Darnold was so beloved before the draft. Everybody thought this was this unlocked special quarterback talent because they loved who he was off the field. And then he does when you look at his size, like he does have qualities that make you understand why he was the third overall pick, right, Larry? He has size, he has movement as his size. He's cleaned up his motion where he doesn't have that super long windup anymore. He throws really quick. He has a quick release. He is fairly accurate throwing the ball short, intermediate. I think his issues have to do with the game being too fast, and his ability to process to me is not great. But you feel like you put him in an offense with this run game where a lot of the processing is done, and you can just rely on his physical traits, which is his kind of twitchy explosiveness as an athlete with his size combined with his ability to get the ball out of his hands quickly. And you think that that could be capitalized upon with this offense. Now, my issue with that is I've been told the same story every offseason about Sam Darnold. Year one, he played very well at the end of the year under Jeremy Bates, who's, coached under Mike Shanahan for a while with Todd Bowles, and he looked like, okay, the Jets might have something at quarterback. Then year two, it's a mess. Okay, it's all Adam Gase's fault. Year three is a mess. Okay, it's all Adam Gase's fault. Year four, okay, we're going to ship him off to Carolina. They start 3-0. See, we told you Sam Darnold's excellent. No, wait, it's Joe Brady's fault. No. And then last year, he comes in and he plays about as mediocre as a quarterback could play, but they happen to go 4-2 because they're running it for 200 yards a game. And so I think that there's a hidden belief in Sam Darnold's talent that seems to exist within the NFL community that's obvious. It's impossible to miss, right? They love this guy. There's an agenda that people love this guy. People that are respected in talking about quarterbacks love him. I think Kyle Shanahan loves his skill set. Clearly, I think Kyle Shanahan seems to think that there's hidden talent to the guy that's not been capitalized because he's been in crappy situations. Perhaps that's the case, Larry, but I agree. It seems to be a common outlook. And so far, for 5 straight years, we've been told the same thing about Sam Darnold. And for 5 straight years, he's been a disappointment.
I mean, sometimes I want to be ahead of it and I'll make a prediction. Other times I'm comfortable, playing from behind. This will be one of those times. If Sam Darnold's going to be good, it's not going to come with my prediction. I'll be the guy who says he's good after he's good, because the guy that I'm watching still had a lower completion percentage last year than PJ Walker. Still wound up getting sacked 10 times in 6 games, 7 touchdowns, 3 picks. I mean, he did have a 92.6 quarterback rating. That was higher than the other Panther quarterbacks, but I don't buy it. The guy, to me, looks like just mediocre in everything that he does. I see an athlete, but I don't see an exceptional athlete. I see a quarterback who's had some success, but I don't see exceptional success. I see arm strength, but I don't see Joe Flacco or Terry Bradshaw or anything crazy. There's some likable traits, but I don't see anything super special. So we'll see. We'll see what it looks like. I find it really hard to believe that Darnold could beat out Lance, but there's enough people saying it that it makes it intriguing. I will say this. I would, if it was up to me, if Shanahan came to me and said, hey, what do Brock's not going to play in camp. It's going to be Sam versus Trey. What do you want the splits to be? I want them at least 60-40 Trey. I want Trey to have at least six reps of every 10. He needs the reps. It's okay that you brought in Sam Darnold. It's okay that you're trying to be the reclamation location for his career. But let's not pretend that he's not a 5-year vet. Let's not pretend that he hasn't had previous opportunities. Let's not pretend that, that he hasn't played before. You've got a guy who's played in the NFL and established himself as thoroughly mediocre to below. And you've got another guy in Trey Lance that has not played. So I want to see the guy who has not played, who's played a total of 4 games. I want to see that guy get 60% of the snaps minimum. I'd prefer it if it was more like 75-25, but I got to have 60-40 Trey snaps over Darnold come camp.
I 100% agree. And to me, the 49ers quarterback situation simply boils down to this, right? The outlook, I think, for most of us still is that the 49ers are in need of a franchise quarterback, right? Nobody has established themselves as, hey, that's going to be the short-term future of the 49ers. For the next 2 or 3 years, that guy's going to be the star. We thought it could be Brock Purdy, but he's hurt now, and he might not start at the beginning of the season this year, which now opens the door for it to be Trey Lance, who we thought it would originally be before he got hurt when he got drafted. And I guess the door is still somewhat open for Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold has had 5 opportunities in the NFL to prove that he is a franchise quarterback, and he has not proven that. Now, I don't disagree with this idea that Sam Darnold can't reclaim, be a reclamation project and be a successful football player on the 49ers. I genuinely believe he can be that, Larry. But being a franchise-level quarterback, I think he's proven he can't be that guy. I mean, even in crappy situations, we see guys who are capable of being franchise quarterbacks, right? Justin Herbert, I don't think the Chargers situation is that great. That's a franchise quarterback. I saw it for years in Detroit. I kept telling everybody. I told every Niners fan, Matthew Stafford. That was a franchise quarterback in a crappy situation, so we can see it. Sam Darnold didn't prove himself that way. I don't know if Trey Lance is going to be a franchise quarterback, Larry, but the one thing I know about Sam Darnold that I don't know about Trey Lance yet is that I don't know if Trey Lance can't be a franchise quarterback. And I know Sam Darnold can't be a franchise quarterback. So what's the net gain if Sam Darnold goes and performs great for the 49ers this year? Because I think that great is always still going to be veiled by the mediocrity that preceded him and around the question mark that this system is so good and the weapons surrounding him are so excellent. He is going to be, whichever quarterback plays quarterback is going to be a beneficiary of that. Why does it matter more with Sam Darnold? Because Sam Darnold will then be a free agent. What are the Niners going to do? Tell us that their philosophy is not to pay quarterbacks and then give Sam Darnold $20 million a year because he had one very good season? What ends up happening in that situation? So to me, really, Larry, this is why when you look at the finances, you look at the long-term future. If you're telling me, hey, with Brock Purdy, because I have real question marks with Brock Purdy, Larry. It's not just the severity of the injury. This idea that he's just going to miss at least 60, 70% of the offseason in the best case scenario and walk back in as a quarterback going in from year 1, year 2, and have the timing and the rhythm and everything he had from midseason last year. I don't buy that timeline. That entire thing is very shaky to me in my head. I don't get the logical flow of that one. And so when we look at it as well, a lot of what goes on this year is going to dictate the long-term future of who starts at quarterback. I'm not really seeing the long-term benefit to Sam Darnold winning this competition or being the starter. I'm with you. I think you push to try and create the scenario that Trey Lance isn't the starter. And if he flops, even with you propping him up and giving that opportunity this offseason, then that's okay because you just fall back on Brock Purdy to me.
And they just need to stop protecting themselves. John and Kyle need to stop protecting themselves against criticism that they picked the wrong quarterback. We need to find out right now. No more, he's great and he's got all this potential, but he's just not quite ready.
Right.
No. There's no more of that. It's time to, you pick the right guy. Guys, you pick the wrong guy. It's time for them to wear the blame or wear the credit. It's time for this thing to be decided. There will be no more, deferring to the future. As far as Brock Purdy,
by the way, before we go there real quick, one thing I want to add to the Purdy conversation is I think they can do that and still not look stupid, even if Lance stumbles, because to me, if they keep Brock Purdy on ice this entire offseason, and for a lot of this season, just let him be as cautious as possible, given the severity of the injury and given the difficulty it would be for him to play without the lack of offseason and all of that. They always have the fallback of, yes, it didn't work out here with Lance, but we had Brock, and you saw how good he was when he had the opportunity to play the 8 games. We almost won the Super Bowl with Brock, and Brock's now going to come back. He's going to be fully healthy. He's going to have a full offseason to get himself going, be throwing with the guys, have his timing, his rhythm, all of those things on too. So I think there is actually a benefit in doing exactly what you described, Krug, because they still have the biggest get out of jail free card with Brock Purdy in their back pocket. Now go ahead.
What I was going to say about Purdy is that, I'm not going to sit there and say that he can't play this year because he didn't have an off season. You got to remember last year he didn't even get very many reps in camp. He was the 3rd quarterback behind Sudfeld and Trey. He barely played And then he didn't play at all from the last preseason game in August to the first week in December. And then without any warning at all, without any knowledge of that he was going to play at all, he just gets thrown into the mix. And the Dolphins just start bringing zero blitzes in his grill over and over and over again. He reacted like a 10-year pro, staring down the barrel of the rush and delivering strikes, and won that game, and then went on and didn't lose any games in the regular season. And this crap that he didn't play good defenses is just that. Tampa's got a good defense. Washington had a good defense.
Who said that?
Well, all kinds of people. People were saying, oh, the first time he faced a good defense was Dallas. Dallas wasn't even as good a defense as Tampa. Tampa had a better defense than Dallas.
Okay, that's just a wrong point. I think it's irrelevant. Though I do think I will say what you said, and I didn't mean to make your point irrelevant. I think the point that he played bad defense that's a moot point.
Yeah, that's not true. And also
true.
He didn't, it wasn't like last year was some perfect situation. He didn't even know he was going to play the night before that Tampa game, and he stepped off the bench and played
the
great. Miami game. But I'm just saying, my point is just that just because he didn't go through a full offseason doesn't mean that he's somehow going to be bad.
Wait.
I think he's going to play and play well. And also,
you're making a different point though, because it's not just, well, okay, last season he had less reps. Last season he was fully healthy. He was trusting his throwing. He was practicing. He was running scout team practice. He was getting better, right? There's an opportunity to get better. George Kittle talks about this.
But he wasn't running their offense. He was running the opposing offense.
Sure, absolutely. But George Kittle doesn't always mention this. He's mentioned this a couple of times. I always mention it. That he mentioned this a couple of times. That he doesn't like getting surgery in the offseason, and he likes training because when he gets surgery, he rehabs, and rehabbing doesn't allow him to get better. Training allows him to get better. And Brock Purdy also, we've heard NFL players mention that the transformation that goes on from offseason of year 1 to year 2 is the biggest offseason, because that's what happens when you go from, being able to, get your body and everything assimilated to what's going on in the NFL, and you make that transformation. I think missing those two things. And then for a quarterback, Larry, I think you're discounting the entire offseason of going through and throwing. Tom Brady worked with Edelman and Amendola and those guys for years, and they would still start throwing around May, and they would be working on their timing and getting the refining down and all of that. I think we've not seen a lot of quarterbacks not have to go through an entire offseason. We know how much repetition matters, especially for a precision-based offense like the 49ers, where so much is based on timing and rhythm and all of that. I think, look, the points you made are difficult for me to argue against. I think they're excellent points. I think they're fair points. But I do have a level of fear with him not being able to go through that. This idea that, okay, he's also had this serious injury, but we throw him in week 4, he's just going to return to being the same Brock Purdy as last year. I think that's a very unreasonable expectation, let alone the fact that Shanahan has gone through a similar situation where a guy had an excellent rookie year, got hurt in the playoffs at the end of the rookie year. They rushed him back. Now, there were other situations, other things involved in that situation, but ultimately what happened is that it didn't work with that quarterback. So given both of those two things, I'm worried. I am worried. I am worried as much as I do think your points are fair.
Well, I'm not worried, and I'll tell you why I'm not worried. I'm not worried because most of the work is mental reps, and he can do all of it. He can do all of the mental reps. So he didn't know the offense at all when he went to camp, when he went to mini camp last year. Now he's had a full year to learn it. Look at the difference from Matt Ryan, who's a veteran NFL quarterback, going from year 1 in Kyle's system to year 2. He was okay in year 1. He was the MVP in year 2. So I personally think that the mental
But there was
reps,
also a physical change in Matt Ryan too, right? The big thing with Matt Ryan from 15 to 16 is that he mechanically opened up his deep ball. He did
okay, but I mean, you're talking about a guy who
at
that point was already a veteran and
Oh,
was
100%,
already
100%,
yeah, I mean,
100%.
and now you're talking about, what do you really need? You need to know how fast your receivers are, and you need to know their tendencies. You need to know where they like the ball. You need to know. I guarantee you there's knowledge that Brock Purdy has right now today that he didn't have about Brandon Aiyuk, Juwan Jennings, and Deebo Samuel last year at this exact time, but he does have it now. And so he's not losing that because he hurt his elbow. And the other thing is that now he gets an entire offseason of mental reps. And when it's kind of like when when you can't see, all of a sudden your hearing becomes that much sharper, or you can't hear, suddenly your eyesight becomes sharper. When you can't do the field work, your mental work becomes that much sharper. You're that much more keyed in on the details. So I expect him to come back better than ever. Now, as far as Clayton Thorson, we just saw Thorson in the rookie minicamp, a guy who had the same procedure, throwing deep balls down the field and looking great. Now, that's no guarantee that Brock, I mean, it's a different person, different body, different elbow, but the exact same procedure. And so it at least gives me hope that that maybe he's not going to have diminished arm strength. The only thing that to me is a concern, it's not about the lost reps. He got a lot of work last year. It's more about
Larry,
it's not about the reps.
Sec.
It's about the physical diminished
with Thorson,
skills.
With Thorson, are you really comparing, him throwing in shorts and a t-shirt, 2 years, or isn't he 2 years removed from that injury?
I don't know about that. I thought he was 1 year removed.
Is he one?
I don't know.
I'm trying to remember when exactly he got hurt, because I didn't even trigger that he had the same exact injury until you mentioned it right now.
But
it's not like we've been able to see him in the game.
He's not like he's done. He's out there and he's throwing deep balls down the field to Pearson. And
Chris Sims wasn't done after he had his spleen removed, but he was kind of done. He was done being a starter. Like, if Thorson doesn't make a team, like, he could still be attempting. Marcus Lattimore attempted to make many a comeback from those.
Yeah, Marcus Lattimore.
I don't think that's a fair.
Marcus Lattimore's a running back who blew. I mean, that's like a car that was in a major accident and has a bent frame. A running back with a blown out. He didn't just blow out the ACL. He blew out the ACL, the MCL.
No, I'm not comparing the severity.
I mean, I'm just saying that was general manager negligence on the part of Balky to even draft that kid.
I'm not comparing the severity of the injuries. I'm just saying a guy simply trying to make a comeback while returning from an injury doesn't necessarily mean he's the same exact player. Clayton Thorson had decent hype in the 2019 draft. I mean, I think a lot of people thought he could maybe be an adequate backup type player, right? Am I misremembering?
I don't think he was drafted. No, I think he was. I don't think was he drafted?
I don't think so. But he had some people liked him, right? I do remember that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people like Kafka when Kafka came out of Northwestern. Some people liked like this kid Thorson, and they both were thought to be, guys that had mediocre ability but great processing. Really, I mean, Northwestern, you got to be smart to go to Northwestern. And those guys both were really cerebral football players. And now Kafka is a future NFL head coach. And I think Thorson's probably on that same track. He's probably going to be a future NFL head coach. My point is just simply that watching Thorson look very much like the Thorson I saw at Northwestern gives me some confidence that maybe Purdy could come back. But my bigger concern is not about Brock. It's like, whether or not he can come back. Okay, we're going to find out. He can't lose any arm speed. He can't lose any velocity. He doesn't have any to lose. So it's really important that he not be diminished.
Man, that's a backhanded compliment if I've ever heard one.
Well, he doesn't have a lot of velocity on his ball. He's got requisite arm strength. He doesn't have Joe Flacco arm strength. He's got just requisite arm strength. And now post-surgery, maybe he doesn't. But we'll see. I'll hope for the best on that. But I think Ender here in the comments makes a really compelling point. He says the 49ers made the mistake last season of making Lance the starter without earning it on a Super Bowl team. It's not that much different than the James Wiseman thing. He said that's why there's a competition to earn the job. They can't just give anybody the job. They can't. They have to have a competition because they really can't just say they can't anoint anybody the starter. They have to have some form of a competition.
I disagree with that.
You're going to lose guys. You're going to lose guys. You're going to lose guys in the room if you anoint a starter. Because guys, they want to see a competition because they compete for their spot.
They're not paid to make those decisions. Shanahan is. So guess what? You might
No, but Shanahan
have an
listens to his
opinion on it, but
players.
it doesn't matter. Their
No, I
opinion
know, but
shouldn't
it's not.
matter.
That's old school thinking. That's no more like, hey man, I'm the fucking boss here. It's my way or the highway. That's the old days. The new days is the veterans on your team have a say, and then there's a dialogue, and you're communicating to them. I'm just saying, for the ultimate healthy locker
No,
room,
I get
you
what you're
want to
saying.
have
I
some form of a legitimate competition.
I get what you're saying. I just I
There's
don't know.
going to be pushback. If you
I
give the
think
job to anybody, there will be pushback.
it wasn't Jimmy Garoppolo handed the job.
But that's a totally different situation. He had already led them to a Super Bowl at that point. And he was
They were
talking
handed the
about
job
rookies.
before he led them to the Super Bowl.
Well, but then at that point, who's he handing it to the judge? He's getting the job over who though? Hoyer and Beathard.
I'm not saying.
I mean, the day they
Garoppolo,
traded a second-round pick for Jimmy Garoppolo, he was going to start over Hoyer and Beathard.
Well, that's the same thing. That's the point. That's the exact point.
But I'm saying that's not an ideal situation. I'm saying an ideal situation is a competition, because you got to remember this, Vish. There's nobody who is sitting there going, Hoyer should be the guy, Beathard should be the guy. But there could be guys in the room going, Brock should be the guy, Trey should be the guy, Sam should be the guy. So you got to avoid that. And you got to avoid that by having some form of a competition. But I think
a competition creates that. I think a competition enhances that. And that was going to be my point. I didn't bring up Jimmy Garoppolo to say he wasn't deserving to be distinguished as the guy. He 100% was. Absolutely. And just like when they traded a second-round pick to Jimmy Garoppolo, that means he was going to get an unequivocal opportunity to be the guy a few times. When they traded 3 first-round picks to acquire Trey Lance, to me, he deserved the same thing. I think when you have a quarterback competition and you allow it to play out organically, it allows people to think, oh, hey, this guy is the guy. No, I like this guy as the guy. No, I think this guy is the guy. I think it creates those other forms of opinion. If other people think this guy should be the guy, but you keep telling them this guy's the guy, guess what? This guy just becomes the guy. Everybody's like, okay, I can't change the fact he's the guy. We're going to follow him.
There's a major difference. Jimmy Garoppolo had already played in the NFL. He had already been a backup. He'd already been to multiple Super Bowls. He was a veteran, and he was a hand-picked veteran that you traded a second-round pick for, and you only had C.J. Beathard and Brian Hoyer. Now, Trey, on the surface, when they made the trade for Trey, he was going to be the starter. But you're still projecting an FCS player to make the jump to the NFL. Very few guys have made that jump successfully. So now that time has gone by, Brock's done some good things. Trey's done some good things. Sam Darnold's coming off a nice little run. I think it's probably important to have some form of a competition. But at the same time, and I brought this up to Grant earlier, it's got to be clear cut. This only works. It only works if there's a clear cut winner.
I agree.
It will not work if Trey's an 8, Brock's a 7, and Darnold is a 6. It won't work. Then we're all going to debate it, and the fans are all going to debate it, and the players eventually are going to listen to us and the fans, and they're going to start debating it. So you can't have a 5, a 6, a 7, a 6, a 7, and 8. Hopefully there'll be some clear cut separating factor that tells us all that this guy's the 1, that guy's the 2.
And look, we are 58 minutes into this show. I think that was the best point that was made by far. Without a doubt, that is the point. If you want to tell me, hey, Vish, you just said you're worried about this, you're worried about that, Krueger isn't so worried about these things the entire show, whatever. If somebody distinguishes themselves easily as the guy, where they far and away win this quarterback competition, running away in practice and throughout the preseason and all of that, then the Niners' problems are solved. All the worries that I had, and I have mentioned throughout, whether it's in regards to Purdy's injury, in regards to quarterback competitions in general, in regards to the uncertainty that's surrounding all 3 of them, that all just gets washed away. And I think I've been saying as a Niners, I've been saying that, in my opinion, the best case scenario for the Niners is that Lance wins the quarterback competition this offseason and kind of establishes himself as the guy just because Purdy's coming off of injury and just because you don't have Darnold necessarily cost controlled for beyond this year. I think it's a step further than that, Larry. I think the best case scenario is that Lance wins it comfortably. Because if he barely wins the quarterback competition, and I think week 1 at Pittsburgh is an absolute doozy for the Niners, for whoever quarterback plays. I think it's a very, very tough game where I think any quarterback is not going to play well in that situation. I think we're back to the tension that came after they lost week 1 at Chicago from last year. But if he wins it running away, then he might get that opportunity. I think that was a fantastic point. I'm with you completely.
The one part about this that is really makes this from like this level of a story to like that level of a story is the urgency with which all three guys are going about this. If Sam Darnold is a bust here, Sam Darnold is a bust, and Sam Darnold knows it. So he's going to be like whatever the best of Sam Darnold is, baby, get ready for it because he's bringing it this summer. Because when the music stops playing, his NFL career is done, and he knows it. So he's bringing it. Then you got Brock Purdy. Well, let's go move to Brock for a second. Brock just got a taste of it. He got a taste of the redemption that he sought since he was passed over in the draft. And this guy was a very accomplished quarterback at Iowa State. Iowa State was in the Fiesta Bowl. Iowa State was damn good under Brock Purdy. So he feels like he was disrespected, passed over, snubbed, whatever way you want to say it. He doesn't think that he's the worst quarterback. He thinks he's damn good. He was picked with the last pick in the draft. He's got a boulder on his shoulder, not a chip, a boulder. So he's trying to prove that last year he hears all the talk. This guy's a, dink and dunk guy. This guy's a, system guy. This guy's he can't get it done. There's all kinds of Niner media people, content creators, and fans that are screaming everywhere you look that Brock Purdy.
This Larry Krueger guy is just
Brock Purdy's just lucky. Brock Purdy's lucky, and and the whole thing was just luck, and that he's going to go back to being zero. So he's got a huge motivation to show everybody that ain't the case. And then you got Trey Lance, and man, come on, man. Trey Lance's daddy was a football player. Come on, this is the family business. His brother is a football player. Football is what the Lance family does. This isn't like, it doesn't really matter. He's all in. And Trey is very, very serious about being not good, not pretty good, not very good, fucking awesome. That's what he wants to be Mahomes. That's why he went and trained with Mahomes, because he sees a Mahomes-like future, and lots of scouts do as well. So he's hell-bent to not just win this job. That's just step one. He wants to win this job and establish himself as one of the great young, quarterbacks in the history of football. That's what he's about. So you've got three guys who all are not just in a competition. I mean, Matt Flynn, Russell Wilson, really? Matt Flynn was a bum. Matt Flynn sucked. He didn't even deserve to be on that same field with Russell Wilson. These three guys all think they're damn good, and they can all point to something that tells them that they're damn good. And it's on, man. This is going to be.
Have some respect for the man who's thrown the most touchdowns in a game in Green Bay Packers history. Have some respect for the man who's thrown the most touchdowns in a game.
No respect for the great Packers. Flynn. No, but I mean, these guys all are looking at the starting job as just the first step to an incredibly successful career. So I think this is going to be the one worry that I have is that this story is so juicy, that this story is so big in the grand scheme of the NFL that it's going to basically just outshine everything else. And we're going to be talking about this every day. And I hate camp stats, but get ready for camp stats.
Oh, it's gonna be brutal.
Camp stats are gonna be. I'm gonna be doing all kinds of videos on why camp stats mean dick, and people are gonna be putting out camp stats left and right and
It's going to be
people are going to
further.
be opening their opinions with, well, you do know that Trey Lance completed 82% of his passes this camp, and Sam Darnold's only completed 42%, and Brock Purdy's only completed 62%. And people are going to be going with that as like a premise for like a solid argument. Like, I'm telling you, this guy's better than that guy because of camp stats.
Well, we've gone through
Get
this
ready
before.
for that, man.
We've gone through this before. Look, the camp stats are wildly overrated because sometimes, and I've learned this, and it needs to be explained. Like sometimes when you see a quarterback go 1 for 7 in practice, the coach might want him to go 1 for 7 in that practice, and it's not because he wants him to throw 7 incompletions in a game or 6 incompletions. It's because they want him to get habitually comfortable making a certain throw from a position. Like they want to force that habit of, hey, we know that you can check the ball down, but we want you to make this aggressive throw. We want you to get comfortable making this aggressive throw. It's okay if you go 2 for 8 in practice. Those type of things happen. I think third string all pro is exactly right as well. Hard Knocks will definitely want to be there. I'm with you. I think it's going to be engaging. I think it's going to go beyond that. I think we're going to see Sam Darnold, if he has a conversation or Trey Lance has a conversation with Christian McCaffrey like 2 minutes before practice, people are going to take that and be like, does that show who's in the lead? Whoever Kyle Shanahan says, if he has a 1-minute conversation with Lance, but he only has a 30-second conversation with Darnold, it's going to be everything. This offseason is going to be one of the most, in terms of this offseason is going to be its own season. That's how it's going to be. It's going to be exhausting. We're going to analyze everything. Every single week, there's going to be a different story. By the way, Larry, you got to block this guy, Jay Mill. What's going on? What's the deal with that? I thought you don't block, Larry.
No, well, no. I mean, all I'll say to Jay Mill is, Jay Mill, what you said, and you know what you said to get blocked. So
this is a
that's
deserved block.
That's all I'll say. But I will say this, Jay Mill, because this is just how I roll. I'm going to unblock everybody, including you, Jay Mill. So I'm going to unblock everybody.
But are they on like a probation thing or they're back in?
No, I think once you're blocked, you're forever blocked. So I've just instructed my behind the scenes guy who blocks, who basically does a lot of my behind the scenes StreamYard to unblock. And Jay Mill says, "What did I say? I honestly don't know."
Jay Mill. So now Jay Mill is allowed to go to Pick and a Pickle. Now
I don't block. I don't block anybody for no reason. So you obviously said something that was crossed the line. But I'll just say this.
You know what he said?
No, I don't.
Oh, come on. No,
I'm not. I mean, I don't block a lot of people, but I block enough to not remember. But I've just instructed my behind the scenes producer to unblock all of the StreamYard block chatterers. Everybody back in the fucking pool. We're back in the pool. We're back, baby.
We're back.
Everybody's back. So I'm, next time I go live, everybody who's been blocked will be back. Should make for a juicy.
Boogie says, no pickle in a pickle for you.
No pig in a pickle. You're back in. You're back in, J Mill. Everybody else back in the pool.
I did not say pig in a pickle, did I? What did I say?
You said pick in a pickle?
Yeah, I think so. That was
picking a pickle.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. Looks like the Lakers game is going off right now. I just have received a few. Oh, whoa. 3-point game. All right, Larry, I think it's a good time to end our stream right here.
Is it a 3-point game? I'm watching. I got it right here. It's on a commercial right now.
Okay, I guess I don't have the very refined setup as you where I can do the, double screen. I'm very focused and, just thinking about our show here and thinking about, arguing all the great points that you made over the course of this hour.
Are you sitting in front of a closet door or is that your front door?
No, that's the furnace.
That's not that door behind you?
Yeah, it's just the furnace. I don't know why it's there. I'm just in this apartment. My bedroom. This is my bedroom. So I live in a 1-bedroom. This is the bedroom. And for whatever reason, there's just a furnace door there that's like just has this big furnace in there. I've opened that door like 3 times maybe total since I moved here. But it seems to be a massive point of entertainment for other people because they're like, why the heck is there like an outside like door handle, but all the door handles in this place are like that. So
Yeah, it's Denver. If Denver gags game 1, man, that would just be so ridiculous.
Oh, dude, I'd be so happy. I'm
Are
wearing
you
my.
rooting for the Lakers?
I'm not rooting for the Lakers. I'm rooting for LeBron. Look at this. Come on, respect the GOAT.
The GOAT.
The GOAT. I don't actually get
It's
into the
nothing.
GOAT debate.
You're in
but I love
Chicago.
LeBron.
If you ran outside and yelled 5 times, LeBron's the GOAT, LeBron's the GOAT, somebody's going to come and beat the tar out of you. Right? Come on, it's Jordan's town.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't really get involved in the GOAT debate. Like, what am I supposed to do? Sit here and argue about a player that I never watched my entire life? And be like, hey, well, he only averaged 32 points a game in this season. LeBron averaged this much. No. I've been a LeBron fan forever, though. Since the 48 straight, or not the 48 with the 25 straight that he dropped at the Palace. I think when Rasheed Wallace, I think, got ejected from that game, and Antonio McDyess was hurt. So he did have a super highway to the basket against that Pistons team. But I've been a LeBron fan since.
If LeBron would just be if LeBron would just be another great NBA player, I'd be fine with it. It's this constant drumbeat of he's Jordan that makes me push back.
Really, you find that? See, it's funny because I'm not a Warriors fan.
He's not Jordan. He's not even close to Jordan.
I find that to be the case with Steph Curry all the time. Ever since I've gone on Twitter and I've joined Twitter where I follow a lot of Niners people and all that, every game I see, Steph Curry is this. Steph Curry is the greatest player. Steph Curry is now better than LeBron.
Well, he's
Steph
the greatest
Curry
shooter.
LeBron is a debate.
Steph Curry's the greatest shooter. And LeBron's a great player, but he's not Jordan. So we got to stop. We got to stop saying that. Michael Jordan was better than LeBron. He was quite a bit better than LeBron. Michael Jordan was a better defensive player than LeBron. That's half the game.
True. He did win the Defensive Player of the Year. I don't really get involved in that debate, to be 100% honest with you. I think it's way too emotional for everybody involved.
Well,
I just really like LeBron. It's a tiring debate as well. It's the same. Debate. Yeah, it's the same 8 things said to each other, and it's like you're gonna say 6-0. You're gonna say most points ever. This, that. You're gonna say this, that. It's like just say you disagree and move on. I don't really care about the debate. I'm just a big LeBron fan. I love LeBron.
To me, Jordan is like the guy who, married one woman, stayed with her his whole life, had his entire family with her, and grew old together. LeBron is the guy who, got married and then all of a sudden got divorced and found another chick, and then got divorced again, found another chick, and just kind of going from relationship to relationship, doing what's best for him. Jordan married one person and stayed with him. Now, not actually, because I think Jordan's actually on his probably second wife. But you know what I'm saying? As far as Jordan got drafted by Chicago, was Chicago good? No. Chicago was shitty. He made them good. Steph Curry got drafted by the Warriors. Were the Warriors good? No. The Warriors were crap. He made them good. LeBron got drafted by the Cavs. Then
were the Cavs good?
The Cavs were not good. He made them.
He make them?
He made them good.
Yeah.
And then when he decided he couldn't win there, he kicked his hometown in the balls, and called a press conference and to tell everybody. I mean, it would be like if you called a press conference to break up with your wife.
Yeah, the press conference
just break up.
The press conference was not great, though. I do think he gets way too much criticism for leaving Cleveland. The way the pressure got for him in Cleveland, how toxic it was, and what was around him in Cleveland, I don't know if that was reasonable for any human being. But then, of course, those 2 years for sure, it's inarguable, right? Like, he did not – the Miami series in 2011 versus the Dallas Mavericks is the ultimate – black mark on his resume.
Plus, I mean, I'm a Warrior fan, man. I'm a Warrior fan. What he did to Draymond Green, and then the way that whole thing came down, where Draymond got suspended in the finals, ridiculous, for a totally reciprocal response. I guarantee you go play pickup basketball in any major city in America, and you do to any player on the floor what LeBron did to Draymond Green in the finals, which is step over him. Somebody's gonna throw hands on you. So and Draymond, all he did was like,
yeah, but
get off me.
Draymond didn't get suspended for that act. Draymond got suspended for an accumulation of acts, which that happened to be the last one. That's on Draymond. Don't get teed up that many times.
I know, but I mean, a reciprocal response in that situation doesn't deserve a T.
Well, I mean, we just saw. Did you see Jaylen Brown got teed up 2 days ago because George's knee ain't grabbed his knee?
I know, but I'm just saying when somebody dangles their balls over your head and you just push them off you, if he had gotten up and dropped him with a right, that's a non-reciprocal response. If you just stand over somebody and the other person's like, "Hey man, get off me," and just has one motion of push off, like,
and then
get
what
off,
did he say? And
that's
then
it.
What did he say?
That's a reciprocal response.
What did he say, Larry?
I don't care what he said.
What did he say that got
I don't care if he said "fuck off, you asshole." I don't care what he said.
He said the B word.
Who cares? I don't care. So what? Who cares?
All right, Larry, I think this stream needs to end. We need to go watch the end of the game. Thank you for joining me. This was really, really fun. I appreciate you as always. And then I'll see you, I think, Thursday on the Pig and the Pickle.
Thursday, 5 Central, 3 Pacific.
All right. Awesome. Looking forward. I will see you then. Thank you, everybody, for joining. This was very fun. We will see you next week, Larry. Will we be back next week to talk OTAs?
Yes, OTA's coming up 22nd. I think it's next week. So that will be later in the week. So we'll probably have to. I think is it maybe Thursday, Friday, something like that. Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So maybe we can move our second show back and kind of configure it around the OTAs.
All right, sounds good. I'll see you then. Appreciate you. See you Thursday. Thank you, everybody.